in Leviticus 19, there's a passage that talks about leaving margin in your fields.
Mm.
So the Israelites, the ancient Israelites, were commanded to leave margin. They did not harvest the edges of their fields. And when their crops would fall to the ground during harvest, they were commanded to leave it there on the ground. So people less fortunate could glean from those fields, could harvest the edges of the field, and therefore blessing even complete strangers. So they wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily even know the people, but this idea of margin, about producing more than we need so others can benefit, that is such the opposite of our society right now, where we consume
Yeah.
everything. In fact, we consume more than we produce, and we
Yeah.
put it on credit cards, and we
Yeah.
treat the future version of ourselves like a stranger, like, I I bought this thing I can't really afford with money I don't have to impress somebody I don't even like, but that's not my problem. That's like, future Eric's problem and future
Yeah.
Chad's problem.
Thank you so much for checking out the show today. Look, I want you to stay connected with everything this guest has to offer. So make sure that you sign up for my weekly newsletter. I'm not here to spam you. I'm here to just send you all the behind the scenes videos, shorts, reels from this week's guest, plus some other bonuses on there. So make sure that you hit connect below this video in the description or go to my website and sign up right there on the homepage, and I'll make sure that you stay in the loop. Thanks so much again. Have an awesome day. Keep changing the world. Chad, your husband, your father, you're the founder of Veritas Wealth Management. You're the author of Forging Financial Freedom and so much more, man. Thank you for your time, dude. I appreciate it.
Eric, it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience, speak some encouragement and life into their day.
Right on, man. I like to kick the show off by going back a bit. You grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. What was childhood like for you up there?
It was incredible. And I didn't realize it at the time because this was back in the day when like Nintendo and Sega was just coming out and
Yeah.
all of our friends had that stuff. We didn't. So
Yeah.
my day looked like running around in the woods with a pellet gun or a 22 or a bow and arrow.
Come on.
And I thought that I was missing out. I thought I was missing out on the video games and all that. But no, I got to explore the Alaska wilderness as a child. And it is, we talked about before we started recording, it is just the beauty in the areas that we live and being able to see God paint a masterpiece every single morning with sunrises, suns. I mean, it's not easy always living up here, but I
Sure.
absolutely love it. And been born and raised, so almost 4.5 decades up here. It is a fantastic place to live, ruggedly wild and beautiful.
Come on. Oh, that's awesome. Great description there too. I've been wanting to get on the cruise ship that goes up to Alaska. That's on my bucket list to get up there. I've never been there before, but
Do you
heard
like
it's
to
awesome.
fish? Do you
I
like to
love to
fish?
fish, man. Yeah.
So we just got a place on the Kenai River,
Okay.
and it is some of the best salmon fishing in the world. But in the fall, we also have amazing trout fishing. If
Okay.
you ever want to come up, we can put you guys up, and we'd be happy to host you. It is a world-class experience.
Come on. Oh, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that. Get back to your story. Like we all have different journeys on our path to like know Jesus and come to know Jesus there. What was that journey like for you? And was there something that prompted you or something happened that prompted you to kind of give your life to Jesus?
So I grew up in the church.
Okay.
I remember memorizing Bible verses when I was 3 years old. I remember my parents praying with me. I'm very, very blessed that I was immersed in a loving home where God was always praised and His
Mhm.
word was preached, and not just from the pulpit, but even within our home. My parents, I would say, washed us in Scripture on a regular basis. Paraphrasing a little bit of Ephesians there, but.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I would say I did not make surrender a consistent part of my life until I was 19. So I
Mhm.
was I was saved in an early age, but there was a lot of back and forth. And when I was 19, Eric, I was living very selfishly. And if you were looking outside looking in, you wouldn't see like, oh my gosh, Chad's really off the rails. Like
Yeah.
I, I had a good job, I was productive, but it was all about me.
Mhm.
And you had Mark Batterson on recently, and he was talking about miracles and how
Yeah.
miracles, if you're not paying attention, can become mundane. It's the things that we take for granted
Yeah.
every single day. And there was a lot of that going on in my life, where I was ignoring the little, or not the little miracles, but ignoring the miracles that were every single day.
Yeah.
So God had to wake me up with the big one. And what that looked like was almost taking my life with carbon monoxide poisoning.
Wow.
Um, I he needed to get my attention. That's what it took. So I did not know what was going on. The heat exchanger in a house cracked. I'm gonna try to give you the quick and dirty version. But long story short, the levels I was exposed to would could be lethal within 30 minutes, and I
Wow.
slept in it for about 10 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And and the thing is with carbon monoxide poisoning is carbon monoxide pushes oxygen off your hemoglobin. So for sorry, I've got a degree in biochemistry. I'm gonna nerd out for just a second.
Love it, dude.
Not too
That's
much, but
awesome.
what our body is absolutely amazing, and the hemoglobin that God created carries oxygen to our cells. And you think about like a car. Well, the problem with carbon monoxide, or how it is so lethal, is it essentially hijacks that car. So you're breathing oxygen, but there's no vehicle to carry it around to your cells anymore. It's basically on the outside batting on the door saying, "Hey, let me in." Carbon monoxide is like, "No, I've got this." So it takes over your hemoglobin. So you literally are asphyxiating even as you're breathing. And typically what happens is somebody goes to sleep and never wakes back up.
Mhm.
And I kept on waking up, getting sick, and then going back. I thought it was food poisoning at first, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. Point being, though, there was no medical reason for me to have survived that night.
Yeah,
And I would like to say a light bulb went off. It
sure.
was not like that. It was a 6 month process um, of, of healing and recovery. I was angry. I would honestly, I was mad at God. I felt like he took a lot away from me. I was going from the best shape of my life to not being able to get up the stairs
Wow.
um, because my body was just absolutely wrecked. But about 6 months later, it started to dawn on me. I was now 20 because this happened about a week before my 20th birthday. I was now 20 years old, and
Gotcha.
that should have been it for me. At
Wow.
19, I should have been standing before my creator, giving an account for my life, all the blessings, all the miracles, all the resources that I've been given. I would have had very little to show for it, and that was terrifying.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I made a commitment right there, Eric. I'm not going to live like this anymore. God has given me way too much. I cannot afford to live for me anymore. And whew, sorry, I get emotional still talking about it.
Oh, I'm getting
But
chills, brother, dude. That's crazy, man.
so for 25 years now,
Yeah.
God has been giving me an extra day, one day at a time,
Wow.
24 hours at a time. But for 25 years, I've been living on bonus time. And
Wow.
it's given me an incredible perspective for the stewardship, not just of resources, not just of material things or even gifts and talents, but purely just for time because life is so fleeting and fragile.
It is so fragile, man. And I'm 45, and it's like a few years ago I realized that every day is such a gift, man. And part of my morning routine is, if I open my eyes, I immediately go, man, thank you, Jesus, for another day to see and hug and hold my family. I've been given blessed this day, right? And man, and I say it out loud, like even before I do anything. That's the first thing I say, and then man, it's such a thing for us to sit back and realize that, man, every day is a gift, every moment is a gift. And like Mark Batterson talked about, all these little miracles that we don't even acknowledge, right? And then we start to realize it. And after that conversation with Mark, I was like, oh my gosh, man, there is so many miracles that are actually happening right now.
Yeah.
For you, you're a father of six. How do you intentionally model financial wisdom and biblical stewardship for your kids?
Well, I grew up in a home where money was something we actually talked about. It was
Okay,
normalized, which I think is
nice.
very different
Yeah.
because a lot of times when money is brought up, it is when it's a cause of stress. Somebody made a bad financial decision, maybe somebody lost a job, we spent too much money, we lost money, whatever. Money often only comes up in frustrating or maybe even at times of anger or anxiety, but the
Mhm.
circumstances usually aren't good. So part of it was growing up in a home where money was talked about regularly. I watched my dad help people change the trajectory, not just of their finances, but of their lives with money.
Wow.
Because when somebody, I saw this growing up, when somebody models good stewardship in their finances, it creates, first of all, it requires so much discipline and intentionality.
Mhm.
But when that happens, when somebody starts actually managing money so the money doesn't control them, it has a ripple effect into every area of their life. And I
Yeah,
saw, I don't know if you remember Larry Burkett, Crown Financial Ministries. This is kind of before the Dave Ramsey days.
for
So like
sure.
we grew up, like that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
And like my mom made us listen to that show. I thought it was child abuse at the time, Larry Burkett's radio show. We're like, we want to listen to music. We're listening about
Totally.
budgeting, you know? Anyways, this is getting long-winded, but
Yeah.
point being, I grew up where money was talked about, it was taught, but here's the biggest thing, it was modeled. My
Mm.
parents walked their talk,
Wow.
and that was incredibly powerful for me. I'm not saying they ever made mistakes. My parents weren't perfect. I'm not perfect. So what we've tried to do, Mark, is Eric, we've tried to model that for our kids and to make it a normal part of conversation. If we've
Mm.
got a big financial decision coming up, we talk about it. We
Yeah.
maybe don't use the details,
Sure.
but hey, here's what we're going after. Here's what we're sacrificing for. Here's how God has blessed us, and here's what we're trying to do with it. And Eric, just trying to keep those open lines of communication going. But I believe financial stewardship is such an important part of our life because when Christians start doing money God's way, it's amazing how many other areas of their life start falling into place.
Oh, so huge, man. My wife and I, we've kind of inducted the Dave Ramsey envelope system, but digitally, right? So our bank hates us. We have 35 bank accounts, right? Like we just have, hey, this is for groceries, this is for bills, this is for entertainment, right? Then we get paid, we just disperse it, right? So, I mean, and it's right off the top, it's 10%, right? We believe in tithing, we believe in giving back to the church, and such a huge thing there. I want to get into Veritas Wealth Management. You founded this in 2014. It sounds like your dad had some influence there, maybe, but like, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned as an entrepreneur over the last 11 plus years? And why did you decide to go down this path?
Well, so the reason I went down this path is because I saw the impact finances can make. And actually,
Mhm.
my degree's in biochemistry. I was going into a career in medicine. I chose this career for family
Okay.
because I saw that how consuming medicine can become. And I'm not saying that you can't be a good father and husband and be a physician,
Sure.
but I was warned by a couple surgeons who were mentoring me, like this, for you, the way you're wired, Chad, this could consume you. And you need
Mhm.
to be very, very mindful of that. And as we talked offline a little bit, my wife's background is very similar to yours. And so you're celebrating your 20th here coming up. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary in the fall. So we're just a few months
Come on.
behind you. But
Nice.
when we got together, I realized what she was looking for was stability. She wanted a husband. She wanted to raise a family, and I got into this thinking that this life would provide more work-life balance, more stability. And then 2007, 2008, 2009 hit, and the rug just got pulled out,
Yeah.
not just underneath us, but the nation. Huge recession. But I saw very quickly, Eric, how destructive and dysfunctional finances are for most people, how
Mm.
much anxiety it can cause, the relationships it wrecks, the health problems, because our bodies cannot compartmentalize stress.
Yeah.
Eric, when you're stressed about money, when you're stressed about your finances, it seeps into every area of your life. But I also knew from growing up that the reverse is true. When
Mm.
we're confident about our financial decisions, even if there's a hurdle in front of us, but we have a path, we have a course that's lined out, we're like, okay, I am proactively acting on something. I'm not going to react to this crazy world around us. It gives people perspective. It gives them uh, a feeling like they're fighting for something meaningful, and it allows people to take back control of their life a little bit. I saw very clearly what that looks like on the flip side. I was like, this is what I want to be doing. So uh, I actually started this practice in 2007. It didn't become Veritas until 2014, but
Okay.
we're about 15 years, 16 years, or actually no, 17 years into doing this. But
Wow.
starting out in the Great Recession gave me a tremendous amount of perspective for seeing the impact, negative impact that finances can have. And I was like, I've got to bring truth into this world, brother.
Oh man, it's so important to. I mean, I was horrific with my finances, and I got no training, no education, right? On what I should do and what shouldn't do. I got my first credit card at 18. By the time I was 21, I was 21,000, almost $22,000 in debt, and had to file bankruptcy. And it was just like ridiculous. But I'm glad I filed it early when I was 21, got it out of the way, right? But like, just brutal. In your book, Forging Financial Freedom, you emphasize intentionality. Like, what habits do you feel like separate those that are financially independent and smart with their money versus those that stay stuck in that scarcity mindset?
Well, intentionality is huge because our lives don't get better by accident. And the only thing that is necessary for your life to deteriorate is negligence. Like,
Yeah.
think about anything.
Right.
You don't your car, you don't have to add rust to your car or to you don't have to wear down any of the parts. You don't have to take a sandpaper to your ball bearings or anything. Your car gradually breaks down over time. You have to put care and concern into keeping it up. Same thing with your home, same thing with relationships. I mean, the only thing necessary for a marriage to fall apart is apathy. Like people just stop fighting, you know?
Yeah.
And finance is very much the same way. We say in your health, it's we use a lot of parallels with health and finance where yeah, the only thing necessary for your health to deteriorate is for you to ignore it. Your finances are the same way.
Hmm.
So it requires intentionality and it requires consistency. A lot of people are looking for, what's the big thing I can do? What's that magic investment or this perfect budgeting app? Or it's none of those things. It's
Right.
doing the relatively small things on a consistent basis. Again, just like your health, just like your marriage. There isn't one beautifully crafted love note that makes your marriage work. It's treating your wife with love and respect and tenderness every single day, which I struggle with, especially the tenderness part. But it's
Yeah.
committing to that every single day. But it's waking up on purpose with
Mhm.
with a plan for what your day looks like, what your month looks like, what your life looks like. Like, why are you here? Mark Batterson talked like we are not here on accident, but too many of us wake up every day like it's an accident.
Yeah.
And we don't have a path for our life. We don't have a plan. So when it comes to finances, one of the things we do is we actually create a blueprint where
Hmm.
we connect somebody's future, what they want their life to look like, reverse engineer that to where they are today. And you could do this in any area of your life. We just
Sure.
happen to use finances as the tool to help people produce a more free and abundant life. But it's bringing the future into today where
Hmm.
we're aligning our decisions today, our choices, our behaviors, our habits with where we said we wanted to be 10, 15, 20 years in the future, and then looking at the accountability, saying, am I acting in a way that is serving or stealing from the future version of me?
Right. Man. Dude, it's so good. I love this conversation, man. This is so awesome. In your book, you talk about these seven wealth building lessons extracted from an Alaskan oil field, which I thought was really cool. I've never heard that really before, but can you give an overview of those lessons? And what about the Alaskan oil field that inspires you to kind of write about that?
Well, we work with a lot of oil field professionals from all
Okay.
over the United States. And the oil field is a very volatile industry. There's a lot
Yeah.
of uncertainty, and
Hmm.
I'm sure, other industries like that, but there's a lot of stress. Here in Alaska, a lot of the folks that work in the oil industry, they're up on the North Slope. This is literally above the Arctic Circle. Like there's a place in Alaska called North Pole, and you go past the North Pole
Wow.
to go to work.
Okay.
So there's period where, I mean, 40, 50 below is not uncommon. There's periods where these guys, these men and women may not see the sunrise at work for weeks or months at a time. Like it's intense.
Wow.
You're away from your family for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. We had a guy retire recently that spent 43 years working on the North Slope. So for 21 and a half, almost 22 years, he was not around his family.
Oh my gosh.
And just you think of that, the impact that makes. So the reason we use the oil field as an example is because there is so much strain and stress and uncertainty around that job
Mm.
that it magnifies the issues everybody has when planning for retirement. So I don't want to pretend like other industries aren't difficult. Like every industry has its challenges and hurdles,
Yeah.
but the oil industry in particular has a tendency to magnify all of the obstacles that everyday people face. My hope for that was seeing what that looks like for somebody who maybe even has a bigger obstacle than you, and giving people the freedom to be like, okay, if these ordinary people that don't have a degree in finance, some of them don't even have a college degree, a lot of them don't, but they work hard, they're diligent, they have the character to persist and persevere. If they can do it, I can do it. So
Mhm.
that's why we chose the oil field. And these are more mindsets. These seven lessons are more mindsets and perspectives than anything else. When we
Gotcha.
talked about Dave Ramsey, Erik, there's a lot of people out there that teach a good pathway to build financial independence, but without the right mindset, nobody's going to stick to it long enough to get there.
Hmm.
Just think about like a fitness journey, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of good workouts on the internet. You can download a perfectly good a diet or workout plan. But when we're recording, we're sitting here in March. I just came from the gym a few minutes ago, and it's already half empty again because all the people that were gung ho in January downloading Navy SEAL workouts, they've already quit.
Totally.
And the same thing happens in finance. So what I wanted to
Yeah.
do is provide the right mindset so people know what they're signing up for. They know what this journey looks like, and
Yeah.
to harden and form their mind in a way that gives them the outlook necessary to pursue a life of stewardship and financial independence.
Wow. Man, that is awesome. What a crazy story. Like, that those guys are out there working like that gentleman 40 plus years out there, man. That's a long time away from his family and trying to figure out how to financially make that work, man. I think, faith and finances are two things that some folks really try to keep apart, right? And for you, like, how does faith play into your personal finances and even like come to decisions around your work as an entrepreneur and with families and things like that?
They're absolutely integral. I think it's impossible to separate them. So,
Yeah.
the richest man that ever lived, maybe that's debatable. At least the wealthiest man that we know of in the Bible was Solomon.
Yeah.
And in Chronicles 29, I believe it's 11 and 12, he says, "Everything in the heavens and earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. From you are all riches and power. To men you give the ability to lead and to rule." And I believe that that's very much true. So I believe I'm just a steward. God has blessed us with a lot, and I believe too much is given, much is expected. And I'm not just talking about resources. We talked about time. I'm
Mhm.
talking about talents and abilities. I realize that God has blessed me and my family with a lot. And I think the financial aspect is a huge part of our stewardship. God gives us money as a tool.
Yeah.
Money should never be the objective. It should
Right.
never be the end in itself. Again, I happen to use money as a tool to help people build a more abundant and free and independent life. But I also think that that's a great tool to bless others.
Mhm.
God doesn't give us money for us to use it. He gives it to us, I think, to serve others. In fact, in Leviticus 19, there's a passage that talks about leaving margin in your fields.
Mm.
So the Israelites, the ancient Israelites, were commanded to leave margin. They did not harvest the edges of their fields. And when their crops would fall to the ground during harvest, they were commanded to leave it there on the ground. So people less fortunate could glean from those fields, could harvest the edges of the field, and and therefore blessing even complete strangers. So they wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily even know the people, but this idea of margin, about producing more than we need so
Mhm.
others can benefit, that is such the opposite of our society right now, where we consume
Yeah.
everything. In fact, we consume more than we produce, and we
Yeah.
put it on credit cards, and we
Yeah.
treat the future version of ourselves like a stranger, like, I I bought this thing I can't really afford with money I don't have to impress somebody I don't even like, but that's not my problem. That's like, future Eric's problem and future
Yeah.
Chad's problem. But it's such a different perspective where I am here with my gifts and my abilities and my resources to produce, to bless the other people in my life and some people who may not even be a part of my, they're a stranger. I might
Right.
never see the blessing that I'm creating this side of heaven, but I believe that's what I was created to do. So in order to do that, I have to be intentional with my finances. I have to be strategic. Um, like I said, I mean, it's finances don't get better on accident. It's something that we have to work diligently to do.
Come on. Man, that's awesome. I want to jump into your podcast real quick, the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. This is a great podcast. People need to go out and subscribe to it. But you highlight principles of wealth building for everyday Americans. Like, and just curious, like, what's a common myth about money that blue collar workers need to really unlearn?
Well, a lot of people think that the most important, let's touch on a couple.
Yeah, yeah,
Huge problem with my industry, Eric, is that it focuses on all the things that we can't control. So my industry tells you, Eric, you've got to be watching the stock market. You've got to be reading up on the economy. Like, what did Trump do with tariffs this week? And what are tax laws going to look like? What are interest rates going
yeah,
to be? What's the inflation rate? What's going on in Ukraine? What's happening in the Middle East right now? All those things matter, but Eric, you and I can't control any of that.
right.
And by putting so much of our focus on what we can't control, we miss the most important factors of our own life that we do have influence over. That's our own choices and behaviors. One of the biggest things that people can do to start building a life of financial independence is simply living within their means. That sounds so simple, but nobody does it.
Right.
It goes back to that margin, Leviticus 19. creating margin in your life. But people are focused on, no, I've got to find the next, you know, Amazon or Nvidia or Apple. Like I've got to find that next hot company. You don't need to find the next thing that's going to work. You need to use what's always worked. And it's investing should be boring. That's another thing. It isn't about picking some unicorn company. It's
Right.
about broadly diversifying across the globe, really, and just diligently plotting forward. We are the tortoise in the hare race. We're not chasing things, run off the path, but just steadily plotting ahead. So I think, yeah, one of the big myths is that you have to have like this intense knowledge. You have to know what's going to go on in the economy. You don't. Nobody does.
Yeah.
Anybody that says they do is lying to you, lying to themselves, or possibly both.
Right.
The other thing is you don't need to be an expert in finances to be an excellent investor. You don't
Mhm.
need to know I mean, there is a certain amount of financial education I think we're obligated
Sure.
because it's part of our life, whether you're
Yep.
interested in finance or not. Kind of like your health. You don't have to know about the mitochondria and about the Krebs cycle and all that, but you have to know a certain amount of your health to be a good steward, and you can't ignore it. It'll only get worse. So it, financial things do require a certain amount of education, but the thing that separates most people financially is not how much money they make, it's what they do with it.
Mhm.
It's how they behave.
Yeah.
And it's not what they know, it's what they do. There's a lot of people have a tremendous amount of knowledge that don't execute on those things. So really it's character that comes down to anything else. People who build financial independence create better character. They are more patient, they have more diligence, they have more perseverance, they have more intentionality. Those are things, they're not easy, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but anybody can do them. And Erik, I meet people that make seven figures a year that live paycheck to paycheck, and we have folks that we work with that have never made $75,000 a year that are multimillionaires. So
Wow.
it isn't about the money that comes in. It's
Yeah.
about how you behave.
Come on, man. This is so good. Chad, I absolutely loved this conversation, man. You dropped so much great information, man. This is life-changing stuff for folks, man. So I appreciate you taking the time, man. Truly an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
No, it is an absolute pleasure and an honor and privilege to be here, and hope this is encouraging for your audience.
Hey, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast but unsure where to go, you need to go check out erikallenmedia.com. Click on the resources tab there. I will walk you through how to start, launch, and run a podcast. I've recorded over 500 interviews since 2017, and I want to help you launch your podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you catch every show when I drop them. Thanks again. Keep changing the world.